Hi everyone, this is the Q&A and giveaway results video for my 100 subscribers. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I got some really cool questions too. Again, this is for the 3-ounce jar of the Repashy Community Plus and the Marina 100-watt adjustable heater. So let's get right to the questions. Fishroom Fever asks, what is the favorite plant that you have? So I'm kind of plant crazy, and I actually went around and made a list. I have well over 80 plants spread across 12 tanks, and I have 37 distinct species of plants. I'm not going to read them all because it would take a while. But it's a lot to choose from. This is, I think, one of the hardest questions I got, if not the hardest question I got. Yeah. The Radican sword I really like. I have one here in this tank. And I have one here in this tank. I like them because they are adaptable to different lighting intensities, and they seem to be a lot less hungry for root tabs than the Echinodorus amazonicus, or I think they've actually changed the species name now, or the standard Amazon sword rather, and they give this really nice instant tall dramatic look to your tanks. I really like my Crinum calamostratum that is here just because it's such a unique looking plant. I love the Nymphaea zenkeri for its big round mottled leaves. Those are really cool. And I really like Rotala indica. But I have finally settled on the Scarlet Temple as my favorite plant. Once it is settled into your tank and has started producing submersed growth, you can just top it, stick the stems in. There's one there. There's another one right back there. There's a short one there. And there are a few small immersed grown plants that I recently bought right back there. But I find that there is almost nothing else that produces that super red pink color, and I just think it's really beautiful. So that is the favorite plant that I have. Thank you for your question. It was a really hard one. So Fishroom Fever, we're going to go, and the bowl. The next question is King's Aquarium in Antworld asks, what is your favorite betta you have had or would like? So my dream betta, I think, is the green alien betta. It is a betta mahachiensis, if I'm pronouncing that right, cross with a bunch of other wild types of bettas and betta splendens. I'll put up a photo of it. That is just a screenshot of a Google image search. But of course, my favorite fish is Mr. Jeremy. He is my sassy betta that started it all. And his colors are not going to show up well without flash. But yep, there he is. And he has stopped tail biting. So that is really good. So thank you for your question. King's Aquariums, go. In the bowl. Mark Hauner, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, asks, if you could only keep one type of fish, which would it be? So my initial gut reaction to this was betta, of course. I really like bettas because of how personable they are, how smart they are, and how mercurial they are. They're also really gorgeous. But if I were to have a male betta, that would be the only fish I could have. And I think I would really miss watching like my schooling fish, my shoaling fish, the really interesting behaviors with like my emperor tetras. So I think I would just have one like maybe really big veil tail male betta, but I would have to have it in like 180-gallon tank that has like a crazy lush aquascape that would allow me to really interact with the tank on a regular basis, other than just feeding the fish. I think that's my answer. So, Mark Hounert, you will go in the bowl. And thank you, Mark, for your question. Joseph's Tropical Tanks asks, how do you like CO2 for your tanks? I like it. So in this tank, I have this little Fluval 45-gram setup that I like, and I've been using it in this tank for about a month and a half. The most noticeable things I've seen is the growth of the Scarlet Temple is a lot more rapid, and it has turned from a lot more of like a light pinkish to getting a lot deeper reds and deeper pinks on it. Also, my Bronze Crypt Wendetti, or Wendettii, has really been getting tall since I've been using it. And this Rotala indica has been growing like a weed. In this tank, I've been using it for about 3 months, and this is the Fluval 95-gram setup that I actually don't like as much. I'm planning on doing a video about that. The most noticeable differences I've seen is the dwarf baby tears. So I was able to propagate this just by cuttings before I used CO2 in here. But the growth rate since I've been using CO2 has accelerated like crazy, and it's putting out a lot of these like horizontal runners on its own now, and it's growing very, very densely. Not that long ago, I actually just cut a huge chunk of it out of the spot where that glass rock is. The other plant I've noticed a really big difference in is this Hydrocotyledon tripartita. That's growing really large leaves for that plant, and is also putting out some horizontal runners that it was not doing before. The Java fern, so I'll let you see, the Java fern came from this tank, and I split it in half when it was getting too big, and I put almost the exact same size plant in this tank that I did in the other one. And you can see how much bigger the Java fern in the left tank with the CO2 has gotten versus the one on the right. So the one on the left used to be the size on the right. Yeah, so I really like using it, and I think I will convert to using a large setup with like a 2 or 5 pound tank and a regulator and solenoid. It's just going to take me time to save up for it. And thank you for your question. Joseph, you will go in the bowl as well. Sandy Dowdy, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly as well. She asks, have you moved any tanks into the new fish room yet? Yes, and I'll show you. Aside from my rescue pleco that I have had down here for a little while, this is the countertop, and I have set up a 29-gallon tank here. This is meant to be an upgrade for the Pseudomogul tank that I have upstairs. It's been cycling for about 3 weeks, and last check I have 0.2 parts per million ammonia, 3 to 5 parts per million of nitrites, and 20 parts of nitrates. So the cycle is well on its way. The background I just made with poster board and scrapbooking paper that looked like clouds. And this is actually what happened to the clump of dwarf baby tears that I cut out from the tank upstairs. So the eventual scape, I want it to look sort of like a fairy garden. I also have 2 snails that are being quarantined down here. This one is just an extra large pond snail that I want to move from one tank to another. And that one is a mystery snail. And the sink is up and running, so it makes water changes for them really easy. So yeah, and this tank will go on the opposite wall when you get the racks in. Of course, we have to do the floor before we can do that. And once I get all this other stuff off of here, like my extra 10-gallon and junk, I'm going to start cycling a 40. So that is what I've got set up down here so far, and thank you for your question. So Sandy will be added to the bowl. Chris Stubbings, Backyard Living in Koi Pond, says, I have a wall-mounted aquarium. That sounds really cool. I'd like to see that. Behind that is basically a space that is about the size of a small walk-in closet. I was thinking of raising swords. I would want to heat a 55-gallon, a 30-gallon, a 20-gallon, and probably a couple of 10-gallon tanks. This space is in the basement. Do you think it would be more economical to heat the small space with a heater to 72 degrees Fahrenheit or use tank heaters? So when I was getting my answers prepared for this video, and I first read your question, I thought you meant sword plants. And that just shows you how much I have plant brain. I'm glad I asked you to clarify that you meant swordtails and American flagfish and possibly Odessa barbs. Because otherwise I would be sitting here talking about different species of sword plants and their water temperature requirements, and you would think I was just like completely off my tree. So yeah, glad I asked. So to answer your question, first of all, I think it depends on several different factors. I'm also like in no way ever an expert. I have this space heater. And that space heater gets moved up to the bedroom in the winter time where I set it to 68. It is either 1,000 or 1,100 watts. It runs constantly in a space that is about 196 square feet. That room is also really drafty, which is probably contributing to it running constantly. So it really depends on how big the space actually is, what size your space heater is, and how well that room is insulated. If it's in a basement where you're just gonna have like cinder block walls, those are gonna act like a giant heat sink. So, and maybe if you have stone walls, I don't know, it would be a little bit more economical if you have drywall walls. But anyway, I think that if it were me doing this project, I think I would heat the tanks, because for like a 55, I would probably do either like 200 watts or 250 watts of heat. And for math purposes, I just said 250. 150 watts of heat for the 30, 100 for the 20, and maybe a couple of 50s in each 10-gallon for another 100 watts, which comes out to 600 watts. So in my case, that would be a lot more economical than using my 1,000-watt space heater. But again, like I said, it really depends on your space heater. I would not recommend the oil-filled ones that kind of look like the old radiators, because we, at our first house, had one of those explode, and it shot hot oil all over the place. It was maybe 2 years old, so, and I wouldn't want to risk anything like that in a fish room, so I would go with like the ceramic infrared heat kind. Yeah, it really depends on so many things. That's really the best answer I think I can get you. I'd love to see the space, and I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question very well. But I definitely appreciate interaction, and thank you for your question. So, Chris Stubbings, you will go in the bowl. Not Nola Jane Fishrish asks, do you ever save sick fish from pet stores? Not intentionally. When I was newer to the hobby, I got several of my fish from Petco, and I know a lot of people's Petcos are really great. And my PetSmart is actually really great, but my particular Petco is not. Every single fish I have gotten there had Camellinus worms, which is super fun to treat. Lymphocystis, I had that in one fish. I also had bought a group of tetras that had some kind of crazy thing going on with them that made them swim like they were drunk. And I exhausted 2 different gram-positive antibiotics trying to help them, and they were just dying one by one, and was finally able to try a gram-negative antibiotic and able to save one of them. So not intentionally, and I've decided not to buy a fish there anymore. I will say though, like, my PetSmart's fine. I do have a fish that I rescued, a sick fish, from a person. So this person is a family member who got this fish as a cleaner fish for their community aquarium. It's a common pleco. He lived 12 years of his life in what was either a 20 or a 29 gallon tank. I was eventually able to convince this person to upgrade their tank. The biggest they would go was a 40, which, okay, at least it's 18 inches deep, and he's a 15-inch fish, so he can turn around. But he has a severe spinal deformity from not being able to turn around in the smaller tank. There was a point at which this family member was in the hospital, and I was going over to take care of her pets and this fish. And I was going to do a water change. The water was opaque brown, not like brown like tannins, like poop brown, opaque. I did a water test, and the nitrates were well over 200. And I'm saying well over 200 because I have like the 30-second test that only goes up to 200, and it turned the 200 color in about 3 to 5 seconds. So I started doing siphoning. There was like this weird biological pink sludge looking stuff in the tank that I don't even know what it was. The filter had flies and maggots in it. He had skin flukes, hole in the head, internal parasites, and a large tumor on his side. And just to be honest with you guys, like, I was about to steal this fish. I was seriously gonna just take it. But my husband convinced me to ask nicely, and despite like all of the arguments I had had with this person over this fish's care, she did allow me to take the fish. So I've kept him in the 40, but it's actually a decent living environment now. He still has some skin flukes. I've treated him twice for those, and they're not gone yet. So we got to keep trying. And I'm not convinced that the hole in the head is yet. I want him to be really clear of that before we move him into a 6 foot, 125 gallon tank. And the tumor that he has is actually shrinking, which is really incredible. So I'm glad it's probably not cancer then. But yeah, so from pet stores, not intentionally. From a person, yes, because I don't believe he would be alive today if I had not taken him. But thank you for your question, and Not Nola Jane, you will go in the bowl. So Chris John asks, what is your favorite size tank? Bonus question, what is your favorite fish you keep? So I think my favorite size tank right now, at least, is the 20 tall. I just find it the easiest to kind of imagine a scape for it and plant it out, and kind of experiment with different looks for it. And it also, like, I actually really like tank maintenance. I find it kind of zen. So my 20s, which I have 4 of, generally take between like a half an hour and an hour for me to do all the tank maintenance and trim plants and all of that. And I like that amount of time that I get to spend with the tanks. If a tank starts taking a lot more than an hour, I get a little tired of it. But I am going to be setting up some bigger tanks, and we'll see if my opinion changes on that. But for right now, I think 20 tall is my favorite tank size. And for your bonus question, I guess, like, I've sort of answered it with, like, if you could only keep one fish, what would it be? But I really like the Pseudomogals, the Pseudomogal furcatus and the Pseudomogal gertrudae. Where are the gertrudae? There's one. The way they swim around is just really delightful to me. I do have that one with a bent spine. Not sure why he developed that, but that's all right. And when they do spar, it's like this really sort of pretty ballet of them sort of encircling each other and flaring their fins out. I've never seen them actually nip at each other or anything like that, so that's fine. But yeah, I love everything Pseudomogal. I hope to keep more kinds of them someday. So thank you for your question. Chris John, you will go in the bowl. Lingen and Animals asks, does your family get your fish/pet love? So for my husband, yeah, totally. And I'm really lucky. Before I met him, I didn't think I would ever find anybody as a romantic partner that would feel the same way about animals that I do. And he totally does. He's super compassionate, whether it is a cat, a bird, a fish, or even a bug. There was a point many years ago where I raised Cecropia moths for release, and there was one particular large female that I got attached to and actually cried when she died. And mind you, these moths live like 3 days. So yeah, I'm pretty sensitive about that kind of thing. As far as like extended family, when his mom was still living, he would talk to her on the phone, and she would always make a point to ask, like, how are your cats, and how is the bird? And this was before I kept fish. And if one of our cats was sick, or we had to have it put to sleep or whatever, she was always really like sympathetic and caring, and was always asking how they were doing. I don't know if his sisters know that I keep fish, actually. My stepmom, you heard me answer not Nola Jane's question. Yes with the cats, no with the fish. There's a very different reaction. Like, if I tell her we've had to have a cat put to sleep, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, what can I do for you? You know, let me know if you need anything, and it's really genuine. It's a very, very different reaction if I tell her I have lost one of my bettas. So I've just kind of stopped sharing stuff about that with her. Yeah, so that's kind of unfortunate. But yeah, at least I have my husband who I can share that kind of thing with. And of course, you will always have me that you can share that kind of thing with. So I really appreciate your question. That's a really good question. And put you in bowl. Last but not least, we have Jack and Dan. Dan asks, what is your favorite vegetable? And Jack asks, who is your favorite superhero? I'm going to answer Jack first. So I might have to disappoint you a little bit. I am not into superheroes and that kind of a thing nearly as much as I am into fantasy and sci-fi. I'm a huge fan of like Star Trek Next Gen and Star Trek Enterprise was a spinoff of that I really liked, and of course First Gen's a classic. I actually have a signed poster of Brent Spiner, who played Data. And I think like my favorite fantasy movie has got to be Dark Crystal by Jim Henson in the 80s. But I mean, I'm not totally like not into them. I did like the first X-Men movie. I liked Professor X, and I liked Magneto too. Not sure what that says about me, so I'm just not going to think about that too much. I also really liked the movie Constantine that came out, and I think it was either 2008 or 2005. It might have been 2005. But that was based on a comic book called Hellblazer. And I liked the movie enough that I went to the comic book store and I bought issues 2 through 4 of it just to start with. I couldn't get issue number 1. And he was a very different character in the comic books than he was in the movies. So in the movie, he's kind of complex and isn't super likable, but he's more just like a flawed character. In the comic books, he's really, really unlikable, and I didn't enjoy reading it. So that's kind of been my experiences with superheroes and comic books, and I hope I haven't disappointed you too much. But now I'll answer Dan. So my favorite vegetable is the green bean. I really, really like them steamed or boiled with like some plant-based margarine, a little bit of salt, and lemon juice. For me, the lemon juice makes all the difference, and like prepared that way, I could eat like a pound of green beans. I really, really like them that much. I also like them canned, but it's like a different flavor. My second favorite vegetable is the pea, like sweet peas. I used to grow them in the garden, and I was never able to grow enough to like freeze, but I would just go out and pick them off the vines when they were ready and just eat the peas like candy. They're really sweet, and I really enjoy them that way. So thank you guys for your questions. It was fun getting some that were not aquarium related. And here we go. Is that going to focus? Here. In the bowl. So I have 10 entrants this time, and They are all in there. I'm going to mix them up. Mix, mix, mix. 1, 2, 3. Sandy Dowdy, you have won my 100 subscriber giveaway. So get a hold of me. I will put my email in the description below with your address so I can send you the Repashy and the heater. And everybody else, you're also welcome to email me for channel stickers, and any of my subscribers at any time are also welcome to do that. And that's free. I'll just send it to you. So again, I really want to thank everybody so much. This is a huge milestone for my channel, and I really appreciate all of you. So thank you so much, and I hope you had fun listening to me ramble on with answers about stuff, and I enjoyed your questions. Thanks.